Okay.
How do I say going live and like, is that on?
We're actually already live, I think.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Are we live?
Yes.
We're all just sitting here staring at each other. This is fantastic.
How did I get in the middle too?
Well, let's see, a rose, no, a thorn. Let's think about that one. It is all good. So welcome to all of you that are watching, or maybe you're going to watch the recording. My name is Theresa Mazzaro, and this is our first inaugural show called RNCONNECT. Yay! I am so lucky to have, I believe he's called my Tonto, or maybe my co-host, Rollis Fontenot, who's going to be handling all of the comments and all of the likes, and is going to be giving me all that feedback while we're in the middle of the show. That way I can focus on our guest, Miss Victoria May, and we're going to be talking about how to find your passion in nursing. So, hello, Victoria.
Theresa.
So I have to actually do a little bit of bragging about Victoria before I even let her speak. Victoria, as she would tell you, did things a little bit backwards in her career, although I would say she did it exactly as she was supposed to. So, how often do you, as a nurse, already come to the table with a business degree from Wharton, an MBA from Villanova, and you've already worked as like a director of surgical and cardiovascular services, and you've been a managed care analyst, and you've done all of this stuff in healthcare. And then, oh, by the way, decide to become a nurse. So in steps Victoria, who I had the pleasure of meeting 2016, I believe, at University of Maryland. We'll give a shout out to that School of Nursing, which is amazing. And we have been in communication and talking ever since. And now I'm going to let Victoria kind of talk about her journey as a nurse, because if you're listening, what I want you to take away from this is nursing is a journey, right? And I think it's the Peace Corps that actually says it's the toughest job you'll ever love. But I'm going to say nursing is the hardest job you'll ever love. And coming off of the pandemic and just as a nurse, period, at the bedside, it is one of the hardest jobs you will ever absolutely love, and it is a journey. It's a constant journey. And I've been a nurse for 29 years, and I have done so many things in my life as a nurse. But 29 years ago, nobody would have ever told me I would be doing what I'm doing now as a recruiter and here on this live show. And I think for Victoria, we'll get to hear her story. And if you're a nurse out there that's listening, I want you to think about, what does my journey look like? Because I'm here to help you get there, and I'm here to help you find that passion. And if you wake up and you're going to work because you're going to work and you don't have that passion anymore, maybe it's time to think about what else can you do, right? So Victoria, let's share your story.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for giving me this chance to share my story with you. As Theresa mentioned, I met her back when I was a last semester nursing student at Maryland. She came and was recruiting for a hospital that to not be named. She had just wonderful advice. She made herself completely available, and I took advantage of that and was in touch with her from then on. She ended up actually recruiting me into my first job as a nurse resident, and I started out in the ICU actually. I had a great experience learning to be a critical care nurse in that position, and really had a wonderful group of warm, welcoming folks that, there was never a dumb question. I was never, bullied. You always hear about how we eat our young. That I didn't experience that at all. And it was just a really great place to learn. But I didn't really see lots of opportunities to grow in that where I was. And so sort of out of kind of frustration, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, I reached out to Theresa again. I still had her information. And I said, Theresa, I need career advice. And she says, oh, what about coming here? And she's like, I've got the perfect job for you. And that was, I think, in the summer of 2019. And I interviewed for the job, but the job had already been filled at that point. And I think the person who interviewed me did it as a favor to Theresa, but, we hit it off really well. And then when the position reopened again later in the fall, I was in touch with Theresa, and it just, one thing fell into place after another, and then I ended up as a resource nurse. So
which I think for resource nurse is the rapid response nurse role.
Right.
For most hospitals, it depends what you call it.
Yeah. So putting my critical care skills to use, sort of in more emergent situations, not in that controlled ICU situation. So it was a step into the unknown. I was going to a new hospital, new organization, all new people to meet, new role to learn. But it was a great experience. I got to meet, everybody throughout the hospital, and ended up getting really familiar with the role that I'm currently in as a stroke program manager, because the resource nurse was responding to code strokes that were called. And so I knew all the key players, and I knew kind of the critical pieces to that. And I ended up, one day we were at MRI, and I was with the former stroke program manager, and we were talking, and I was saying, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And I said, this 3 12-hour shifts things, it's not really working so well for my family. And she's like, well, have you ever thought about being the stroke program manager? I'm like, okay. So I ended up, studying for my certified stroke certification exam, and really started to get to know neuro. And I was like, this is working. This is clicking for me. And then when Mary Jo retired, and she's like telling me, apply for the job. And I did, and it's been the best thing ever. So I really enjoy being, I now have the opportunity, rather being a jack of all trades in all things sort of critical care, whatever kind of comes in. Now I can really focus on neuro and stroke patients. And this has been a wonderful opportunity for me. And I have to say, I was home in between working not as a nurse and going to nursing school. I was home for 13 years with kids. And so when my kids were getting older, and I was like, oh, I'm probably gonna have to go back to work. My husband was definitely saying, you need to go back to work. I sort of pondered what I wanted to be. And when I was in the business side of healthcare, I was always interested in the clinical side. And so I thought, well, maybe let me go get my clinical piece, and then I can meld the two. And that's really what I'm doing in my role now, is I'm doing a lot of quality improvement and analysis and things like that. Not just patient care. So this has been the best meld of all of my experiences.
I think it's funny because as you were describing your journey, so we work for Suburban Hospital. We're one of the community hospitals that's part of Johns Hopkins Medicine. We're located just outside of Washington, D.C. And the hospital that we both used to work for is just up the road. But I can remember walking down the hall, seeing Victoria when she became that rapid response or resource nurse, saying, do you love it? And she goes, it's good. The people are great, right? And above all things, when you feel loved and appreciated on a daily basis, which I can honestly say we both do working here at Suburban, that is a big difference maker to your employees' satisfaction, if you will, and the feeling that you get as a nurse that what you do really matters. But I can remember she's like, yeah, it's okay. It's good. It's probably, I don't know where I want to be, right? And we hadn't gotten there yet. And so how many of you as nurses, and I would love for you to comment, this is your time to comment and let us know, are you there yet? Have you found that dream job? Are you still on your journey? And if you are an experienced nurse who still doesn't quite know what you want to do, I would love to talk with you. So for sure, let's make sure we connect. But back to Victoria, I just think it's fantastic. And here's the interesting thing. I wasn't the recruiter for either of the jobs that Victoria got. It was one of the folks that works for me, David, and I'll give him a shout out right now because he's pretty awesome. He's our honorary nurse as a nurse recruiter. And I just can remember that stroke coordinator position, and I'm emailing her, Victoria, did you apply? Did you apply? And she's like, yeah, I applied. And I remember running into the person who was retiring, and I was like, oh my God, I heard, oh, you've got this amazing nurse. And how do you know her? I was like, I've known her from the very beginning.
So I have a question, Theresa.
Yes, what's your question, Rollis?
So, Victoria, what did you see, when you knew this was home, like when you went to Suburban and you talked a little bit about the culture feel, how you felt at home. What were some things that made you feel like you were at home and you felt comfortable there?
Folks are very down to earth here. Very capable, competent people. I remember when I was first interviewing coming out of nursing school, and you'd go and you do, shadow days, which I definitely encourage people to do. You get a very real sense of what the units are like doing those shadows, be it good, bad, or indifferent. And that can really tell you, like, I don't know if I want to, be on the receiving end of whatever happened at night shift or, whatever. So definitely very friendly, just we're all here for one purpose, and that's to take care of the patient and to take care of each other. And make sure that we're available. And, I was still resource nurse during the height of COVID, and we were constantly changing and evolving every day. And you just felt like you had the best possible people, driving the bus and, leading the way and developing everything that needed to be done. And they were very open to input too from us. Like one of the things, we had patients initially all over the hospital, and people who aren't familiar with Suburban, we had just added on and just opened a new wing like 2 weeks before COVID hit. So we had all these patients way over on the farthest end of the hospital away from the ICU. And as a resource nurse, if a patient was going downhill and we had to transport to them to ICU, it was this major undertaking. So, and through many iterations, we ended up, having a unit open up that was just a floor below the ICU or even just around the corner from the ICU. So it was really easy, just if God forbid we needed to, we could transport patients and stuff. And at one point we even had the ICU, the whole COVID unit was ICU and everything. So we could really just roll them down the hall in the same unit and stuff. So you just felt like they're uber professional, smart, intelligent people that are leading the way for you. So it gave you a lot of confidence in that what you were doing was the right thing and that you were safe. But I won't lie. It was really hard to leave. I had gotten myself very comfortable where I was in the ICU. I was regularly a relief charge nurse. I was very active in the practice council, and I had made a lot of friends. And that was the biggest thing that was keeping me from making that leap but I know I won't see these people on a regular basis anymore. But what I was also seeing is that the unit itself was changing. People were starting to leave. And so it was kind of like, it's now, or this may tip one way or the other. And I just said, I need to do this. I need to get outside of my comfort zone. And that's the beauty of nursing, is that you can be an ICU nurse, you can be an ED nurse, you can go to PACU, you can do whatever. You're not stuck in one position. The person who replaced me as resource nurse had worked as a tech in the ED here, then graduated, became an ICU nurse, then worked in the ED, and is now the resource nurse. So she's run the gamut. So that's what I really love about nursing, is that there's so much you can do with it. And even in my role now, I'm active in patient care. When we're getting a stroke patient coming in from the emergency room, I'm down there trying to help guide the care and assist the resource nurse to make sure everything is in place and that we can do things as expeditiously as possible. But I'm also doing education, community education. I'm doing nursing education. We just finished stroke month. I was going around to all the units and giving them quick 5-minute spiels at huddle about strokes. So I get to use sort of all sorts of skills and develop all sorts of skills and talents.
I will tell you, I think that you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about fresh dye. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many stories like that at Suburban. And it's not just about being at Suburban, it's about being a nurse and about looking at the opportunities. Mm-hmm. I've talked with nurses that have been out there in the field for 15 years. They've been at the same job. They love it. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, wait a minute, is this all? Is this everything? Mm-hmm. And how do you move to that next step? Mm-hmm. Like you said, you were at the other hospital for 3 years, mm-hmm. right? A solid 3 years. And mm-hmm. you had, there was different, like Rollis, I know you know this, but there's different levels of being a nurse. Well, she, I think, was a nurse Clin 3 by that point in time.
Oh, wow.
So she'd worked her way up on that clinical ladder. Mm-hmm. And, it's about, well, what next, right? And of course, I can't help it. When I came over here to Suburban, I thought about all of the people that I might want to reach out to, and Victoria was at the top of the list. And I actually may have reached out to her in 2017, mm-hmm. shortly after I got here, and she wasn't ready yet. And I have to respect that. A nurse's journey is their journey, and it has to be when it's right for you. I mean, we've had people that have left our hospital because they really want to go work in women's services. And we actually, it's kind of weird. It's a very unique feature. I think our hospital we gave up delivering babies in the 70s, and now we do trauma. So we joke around that the only time a baby is born is by mistake in the ED, and then we transport them over to our sister hospital, Sibley, as quickly as we can. But, that is the nurse's journey. It's all about finding your passion, right? If anybody would have told me 29 years ago that I'd be a nurse recruiter, I would have been like, no, I'm going to be an ICU nurse. I'm going to be a flight nurse in the military. And I did those things, check. But in between that, over this almost 30-year career, on hospice nursing, oncology nursing, education, doing all of these amazing things. And I think for somebody who's got that question, and maybe it's not that you don't have the question. I think about this, Victoria. I mean, when you think about leadership, so let's talk about nursing leadership for a minute and what's important to you from a staff RN position. You were in this resource position, and then as this program manager, how important is solid or good nursing leadership, and how would you define that?
Oh, I think that makes all the difference. That having that was part of my journey when I was in the ICU, is that we had a wonderful manager who was very much pushing us to develop ourselves and to get new skills. And she came in and she was pushing us all to work our clinical ladder and to get up there. I mean, she was partly doing it so we could get more money, but partly she just wanted to see us become stronger nurses. And that makes all the difference in the world, to have somebody there who's pushing you to develop new skills and to, and I even said to her during one of my reviews, I'm like, I'd really like to be charged learn how to be charged. Cause I just figured, move all those moving parts in the puzzle. I mean, it just sort of spoke to the logical part of me. And I'm like, I really think I could do that. And she's like, well, I don't know, you're little still early. But then like 3 months later, darn it all, she came, we are really hurting for resource, for charge nurses. Are you ready? I'm like, yeah, bring it on. Mm-hmm. And so I credit, she always spoke of the servant leader. And I think that's true. I mean, I think that's true in anything, I try to do that in my role. I mean, I don't have anybody who reports to me in my role, but I feel that I'm a servant to all the departments that service the stroke team, that I'm here to help them. And it's not about me, it's about what's best for the patient and what's best for the program as a whole. And so really that there is no I in team. I've had that drilled into my head forever. And that's, I think, a really important thing. But part of being a leader is having worked in the trenches. I knew coming out of nursing school that I really had no intention of being a bedside nurse for my whole career. But I knew that I needed to have that experience so that I could understand where people were coming from. And that was a really good thing about being a resource nurse, is because when you're an ICU nurse, you kind of, we sort of look down our noses at the med surg nurses, and you just kind of go, well, your patient's not on 5,000 drips and this, that, and the other thing, what, you're just giving meds. But when I was a resource nurse and I was routinely interacting with the med surg nurses and seeing all that they're dealing with, they're juggling 6 patients and this, that, and their patients aren't sedated, they're trying to crawl out of bed and, everything like that. You get a new appreciation for what other people, you're walking in their shoes. And I think that's a really important thing. Like, I almost feel like some people should be forced to do a rotation. I know I hated it when I got floated down to med surg, but I think there is definitely something to be said for appreciating what other people do.
Oh my gosh. And now you're in the emergency department, you're in interventional radiology, you're all over the place now. Mm-hmm. So you're really getting to see what these different specialty areas are. And it's funny, people talk about med surg. Mm-hmm. Medical and surgical floor nursing are really becoming their own specialty, right? So we have a specific ortho surgical floor. We have an adult surgical floor. Our telemetry units, our medical units, very sick patients with a lot of comorbidities. So it's a respect for each role and each part that each nurse plays to make us successful. Mm-hmm. And, I could talk all day long. And actually, I think my next show is going to be talking about our magnet journey. And we're going to have our chief nursing officer on, Leanne Sedone. And of course, I'm always bragging about Leanne because Leanne grew up in this hospital, right? She started off as a patient care tech. And you want to talk about a journey and servant leadership, she has been through everything with everybody. And during COVID, I would venture to say that you probably ran into her a lot out on the floors and the units, because that's, to me, when I think about, I haven't been at the bedside in a long time. Nobody wants me really at the bedside ever. I had nightmares during COVID that they were going to come get me and say, you have to come take care of this patient. I don't want to kill anybody today. I can give you advice. That's it. But, I thought about Leanne, who was there, like on days, on nights, at all hours, it seemed. I kind of wondered when she slept, but it's that kind of leadership, right? It's like, I'm not going to make you do something unless I'm here with you. Mm-hmm. At your side. And I think for a lot of nurses, you might stay in your department because of your manager, right? You also might leave that department because if the management changes or if something happens and then it doesn't feel the same, right? So you're like, what next? Mm-hmm. And I just feel so blessed that we have Victoria here. And I know she can talk about strokes, but I have to ask a question. Now, this has nothing to do with nursing. And I know you can talk for a long time about stroke stuff. And I appreciate that because my mom had a stroke 12 years ago. And I wish you would have been around, really be there to help make sure her care was as good as it could have been. Mm-hmm. But if you had to have a conversation or if you had to give a talk for like 15 minutes, what would you talk about? I'm curious.
Life with 6 rescue animals and 3 kids. Yeah, COVID craziness hit our house pretty hard, and we somehow ended up with a 3rd cat and a 3rd dog along the way. And the last addition was our retired racing greyhound Finnegan. So it's been interesting to learn all the foibles of retired racers. They're lovely dogs, they really are, but they're dumb as rocks.
So now, so you got 3 kids and 6 pets. Do you divide up the chores between the kids?
The kids have definitely stepped up to the plate. Now, what's going to happen when they all go back to school and they can't walk them, between all their virtual school breaks? I don't know. The dogs and cats are all going to have a rude awakening, but they have definitely stepped up to the plate with that. So, but
oh my gosh,
yeah, it's been interesting. So,
Rollis, if you had to talk about something for 15 minutes, what would you talk about? I'm just curious. We're just having a conversation now.
Oh, well, I'll tell you. There's so many things. I think, one of them right now is probably, because it's fresh in mind, is live streaming, because that's what I do so much. But let's see, outside of that, I like techie stuff. Stuff.
Mhm.
And believe it or not, even you probably won't guess this, I play video games.
What? You're a gamer?
I play John Madden football. Yeah.
Did you manage to get a PS5?
I haven't got a PS5. I'm still on PS4 right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's funny that the mom knows about the PS5 and Rollis knows about the
I'm
PS5.
impressed. I'm very impressed, actually.
I have a 14-year-old boy, so I know all about it.
So do you already have a PS5?
I think that stands for PlayStation, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
I warned him last Christmas. I'm like, I am not playing games trying to get a PS5 for you. You're just gonna have to wait till they're available on the shelf at Target. So.
Yeah. So that's one of the things I like to do a lot.
And I would have never known that, Rollis. See what happens when you ask a question you're live that you normally wouldn't have otherwise answered, probably, but.
I mean, and actually, believe it or not, I'm one of the top 1% in the world on online playing.
What?
Oh, wow.
And that status according to who? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, they rank the top 100,000 players, and the highest I got this past year was around 5,000 or 6,000 out of 100,000. But there's about 8 million that play.
Oh my!
I only rank the top 100,000 on John Madden football.
Now, if there was only a ranking for people who drank wine. that would be my topic. I think.
I say that not to brag, just to say that that lets you know how devoted I am to playing it.
Wow.
I've played a lot of games.
Teresa, I'm having barbecue chicken tonight. What goes with that?
Barbecue chicken. What would go with that? So if you like white wine, I would recommend probably a nice Chenin Blanc, and you could do maybe a Chenin Blanc from South Africa. Or maybe if you want something a little bit spritzy, maybe, I just was listening to a podcast about Prosecco. So
I like Prosecco.
You could do a rosé Prosecco from like Veneto area of Italy. Those are the things I could talk about.
And Theresa,
and nurse recruitment too. I could
you
do that.
introduced me to Sangiovese wine for the first time, and I had it. I love it.
I did. Yeah. And I was just literally, we're traveling, and I know that you've got 6 pets and 3 kids, so when you travel, what does that look like? And your job.
Yeah. The dogs go to the kennel and the cats get a cat sitter.
Oh, there you go. And do you take the kids with you?
Yeah, unfortunately. They demand to come.
Are you going anywhere fun?
Bethany, we always go there every year, Bethany Beach. And then we're going out to California to see my sister. Haven't seen her for 2.5 years now. So,
Bay Area?
No, Los Angeles.
There's wineries. You can still find wineries down there. If the kids are old enough, they could be designated drivers. I have this all figured out for you. So if you were going to give, I could go down the wine path, and I'm not going to. I'm going to bring us back to nursing. Victoria, if you could think of 2 or 3 pieces of advice that you would give to an experienced nurse, and I'm really great at talking to new grads, so we could do a completely separate show on that. But this is kind of focused on our experienced nurses. And when I say experienced, really, in today's world, you get a year under your belt, you've got some pretty solid experience. So what are your thoughts, or what suggestions would you give to those nurses? Like, what next, right? I heard you mention certification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely get certified in your current specialty. I got certified in critical care pretty early on. Just studying for it makes you a better nurse. I think it makes you, I think there's definitely a method to the madness where they say, you need to have almost 2 years of experience before you can sit for the exam, because studying out in a vacuum, you wouldn't have any real world experience to base the things on. So doing that, I think that shows dedication to your specialty and to your nursing knowledge. Also, just make friends with people in other departments, just sort of talk to them, say, hey, what's life like in your department? What do you do? Do you like your department? Are there things you love, things you hate? What are your schedules like? I mean, different departments have different schedules. If the 312 doesn't work for you, or, whatever, I mean, there's always cath lab or, something like that might be different, that has, or if you want to make more money, I mean, there might be a position that has on-call time or something like that. There are just all sorts of possibilities. For the younger people, I would definitely say, don't pick up all that overtime that you can. I mean, have a life outside of nursing. I mean, yes, an extra shift here and there, the money's great. I get it, but you're just going to get so burned out.
Yeah.
You really are. And yeah, you're only working 3 days, but you're working 36, probably more like 40 hours. I mean, you're working full time, and it's hard work. I came into it, I was over 40 when I started. And so it was like, I would feel it afterwards. And I mean, if you're doing it right, you should be feeling it, especially if you've done 3 days in a row. But be kind to everybody. Like, you never know who you might be interviewing with for a job. So you definitely don't want to burn bridges if you can help it. Or if if you get off on the wrong foot with somebody, say, hey, fall on your sword and say, hey, I was out of line or whatever, let's restart. Because you never know.
I think building relationships is pretty key to, and outside of nursing, within the hospital, really understanding what other people do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I worked in diet therapy when I was 17 years old in the Air Force. I made breakfast in the grill in the morning, and then I became a phlebotomist and a pharmacy tech. And I can remember nurses yelling at me for lab orders. And then I became a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, I'm never going to yell at a lab person again, until I had a doctor yelling at me, which made me want to yell. And I was like, I know you guys are slammed. I know I'm not your only person. This patient isn't the only patient, but it's like, be kind to everybody. We're all stressed out about one thing or another, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I have a follow-up question, if you don't mind.
Go for it, Rollis.
Victoria, tell me, how important is having kind of a trusting relationship with your recruiter? And if you were to describe Theresa, how would you describe how it is to work with Theresa as a recruiter?
I mean,
I'll pay you later.
I mean, Theresa made herself available. I mean, she had her secret agenda, her background. She wanted to fill positions, but I felt like she really cared about me. She wanted to find a good fit for me, because it wouldn't do her any good to recruit somebody into a position and they find they don't like it and then they quit. That does away with all of her hard work and the people who work for her. And she could see the bigger picture that I couldn't necessarily see sitting in my position. So she even, I remember she said to me, let's just get you on board here and we'll find that perfect position for you. Like, we all sort of knew this wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but I had the skills to do it, and, it got me in the door here. And it's certainly a lot easier to move within an organization than to move into something at another organization.
Yeah.
And especially when I moved into this role, I knew everybody. And I knew all the key players. So it just made my transition into this role that much easier. I knew who to call, and I knew how to get around the hospital. I mean, my God, it took me 2 weeks. I would sit there every day and draw a map of the hospital, because as a resource nurse, I had to be everywhere. And it just took me 2 weeks just to figure out my way around the hospital,
Right.
So it's definitely easier to move within an organization, especially when you find a quality organization that you want to stay with. So
I think it's funny, because now when I pass her in the hallway, I'm like, still love it, still love it. She's like, yes, yes, yes. And I thank you for that, Victoria. But
water break, I need that too.
I always think about whenever I'm hiring a nurse, because I don't, well, now I do. Now my mom lives right across the street from me. So, you know, when we need care, we go to my hospital, and that's what I want.
Mhm.
But I have to think about this, you know, holistically. Before my mom moved here, I always thought about, well, what about those nurses up there in Maine where she was, you know, like who's hiring them and how are they making sure she's going to get the best care up there? And what am I going to do about that? So it's like, I really want to connect everybody, right, with the job that they're supposed to be in.
Mhm.
And sometimes people aren't supposed to be a nurse. Sometimes you have to step away because it's just not the right fit. But I don't see that very often. There's so many opportunities out there. Like I said, Victoria, would you have said I'm going to be a stroke program manager when you first graduated?
No, because I did my senior practicum in a neuro PCU unit, and I couldn't run far enough from neuro. I was going to be a heart nurse, you know, everything. And then the more I got exposed to neuro patient, and the more I studied, and the more I understood, you know, it's like just today we had a patient that came in and presenting the symptoms, and I'm going through my head and I'm like, I bet it's this. And the MRI, like, yep, that's I'm like, yay, we're, you know. So you never know. Never say never, you know.
Never say never. Although I probably still could never say never. Not that anybody would hire me at this point, but probably I'm thankful we don't have women's services, because that's just
I could never do oncology. So, but
yeah.
or pediatrics. I couldn't do pediatrics either.
And I did pediatric hospice nursing.
Oh
so,
my gosh.
you know, that's the beauty of nursing. There's something for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And we have an impact. Even Rollis, with all of his connections out there, as a non-nurse, you're still connecting people. And I think that's the important piece. And that's why I wanted to have this show. That's why it's called RNCONNECT, because it's about connecting each other and connecting people with where they need to be in their journey as a nurse. And if it's not at the bedside, well, what does that look like? I mean, we just took an ED nurse that worked for us who had some family changes going on, and she's going to start a care coordination utilization review internship next. Actually, I think she just started like yesterday, like this week. So how lucky are we that we had this amazingly skilled ED nurse who's exactly the type of skills that we needed to cross-train into this other role. I mean, it works out. It works out. It always does. So yeah, I'm excited. Rollis, I feel like we've had a great show for my first show. I'm kind of.
It's been great. It's been great. Can I ask a crazy question? Is that possible?
Sure. As long as I can get a drink of water while you're doing it.
Okay. All right. So this is a would you rather question, Victoria. Would you rather always keep one eye closed or only breathe out of your nose?
I think only breathe out of my nose.
Okay, why is that?
Because you need to have both eyes to see peripherally, to sort of see everything. So
that's a good point. What do you think, Theresa?
I would probably say the same thing, but for a different reason, because my husband actually can't see out of his left eye. So if I couldn't see out of one eye and he couldn't see out of one eye, we would be really limited on our vacations and probably be bumping into each other all the time.
Oh, wow. Speaking of vacations, you got to tell us about your vacation before you close out, Theresa.
All right, before I close out. Well, I in the middle of COVID, I think it's kind of funny what people do during COVID, right? Victoria, they got pets, right? Victoria got more pets. We've had a lot of nurses here. We call them our COVID babies, right? We have a lot of people that are going out on a leave to have a baby because they had a COVID baby. But me, I was making my travel plans last May for this past May. And there were, you know, and of course, here we are, getting to the height of the first wave of the pandemic last year. And I thought, I need to go on a trip. I need to do something epic. And we booked this trip to Morocco. And it was supposed to be 2 weeks. Technically, I would have just been back in the office. It was going to be Morocco and then Amsterdam. We were going to be all over the place. And it got reduced to 1 week, but it was all about Morocco and it was life-changing. And we did get to go COVID test before, COVID test after, and just thinking about how welcoming. It's kind of funny. It's like working in a hospital. You feel good when you walk into our hospital, even though you're not walking into our hospital for a good reason. If you're a patient or family member, you feel good because everybody is so down to earth, like you said, Victoria, and they're so welcoming. So here we were in Sheffield, which was the first city that we were touring. And the people were talking to our guide. They were saying, oh my goodness, the American tourists, the American visitors are back. They're back. And they were just wanting to hug us and, would you like this? And do you want to try this food? And, not just sell you something. They were just,
right.
They felt like, wow, we're moving forward. And when you think about Morocco, their second largest industry for making money for that country is tourism. So for 15 months they did without, and it was amazing. It was truly amazing. And I did everything I could to help the economy. And I found a winery in Morocco and I brought back some wine. So I did everything I could, but there are so many similarities when I think about when I travel and how people react and how people treat each other on a plane, how people treat each other, strangers, right? Because when you're in healthcare as a nurse, people are strangers until they're not, right? And the patients and family members, when you greet them and you tell them your name and you open up to them and you share a little bit of yourself with them, it makes such a difference in their experience. And that's what we found when we were in Morocco. It was amazing. Yeah.
I'd like to, I'd like to ask Victoria something, if you don't mind. Victoria, if you don't mind, tell us what are some things that an experienced nurse would want to know when we are showing them, let's say, a short video about something, about a position. What's some quick things that you would want to know quickly?
I guess a short video.
Like a video job description, Rollis?
Yeah. Like what's some quick stats you'd want to know about a place if you just quickly want to watch something and move on. And I know you're happy at Suburban. We're trying to get an idea of how to get other nurses. So I just want to get your thoughts. What do you think would be good to have? What kind of information?
I guess, some sort of the average, like longevity of your employees. Like, I mean, how long have your employees been there? I mean, what's your turnover like? If your unit is regularly turning over and you're having, 100% turnover once a year, that doesn't say much about you. But if you have people who've been there forever, that can be good and bad. But Theresa, was it you that said they're retiring on the job or something? No, that's one of the famous nurse speakers who always said they're retiring on the job. But so sort of that would be an idea, like, what is the tenure on the unit? What are the growth opportunities? I mean, that's definitely one. There are other things to be in advancing in nursing rather than just going back and getting your nurse practitioner license.
Oh, yeah.
And I know so many people who've done that and paid that money and everything and can't find a job that they really like or find a job, period. So growth opportunities for sure. I guess I would want to know something about the doctors, because you have to deal with them a lot.
Okay.
I would want to, meet sort of what are the personalities like. I mean, it takes a while to get to know them, but which doctors am I going to be dealing with, or do they have a hospitalist on staff? I remember one thing I was told in nursing school to ask is, you don't want to have to spend all your time trying to track down a physician on the phone to get orders. You want to know,
yes.
Do you have somebody readily available, kind of thing. So I guess those would be three things that just sort of pop to mind.
I like it. Good advice. I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate all that into a video.
We'll find a way.
So, you know what you could do? You could show the TikTok videos that the hospitalists did of their dance during COVID. that exists somewhere. You could say, you get to deal with these fun people.
I'll find it. Let me ask you that question. I have to dive a little bit deeper. So would something like if a hospital's magnet matter?
Yeah, I think that speaks a lot, because I've been at, organizations where it's not, you don't get the impression that nursing is really at the table when it comes to what's driving what the hospital is trying to achieve. So I think Magnet definitely speaks to that.
Yeah.
That, we are investing in our nurses, and the nurses have a say in how the hospitals run.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's interesting
Suburban,
because you'd almost feel like you'd want to start talking about nurses have a place at the table. But when you say Magnet, that's what nurses think about. And, I'd love to see people's comments about that. If that's, how do you equate Magnet? What does that mean to you? Right. And what does that mean for a job search? Is that important to you? And you're right. It does make a difference. I've worked at many hospitals over my 29 years, and Magnet status makes a big difference. Yeah, absolutely. I just can't be more pleased with this first inaugural RNCONNECT. Rollis, I don't know, you're my Yoda. How did I do?
This was great. This is awesome. And you had a great guest. Victoria was awesome.
Thanks.
I love her.
Thanks.
Again, I go to Victoria. She's my go-to. And, God forbid I think about these types of things, because I am a nurse and a daughter, and I think about my mom, and it's like, you know what? Yeah, she'd be okay here. Something happens, I'm taking her right over here. And now I have all these people's, I'd be texting, okay, we're coming in.
Yeah. Anytime, Theresa.
Absolutely. Take good care of all of us. So Rollis, I think next up, June 29th? June 23rd, June 29th? We've got our next show coming up.
Oh, I thought we had one sooner than that. Okay.
I don't know. We're going to put it out there on LinkedIn. We'll put it out there for everybody to see, but we're going to be having a conversation with our Chief Nursing Officer, Leanne Sedone, Karen Nevis, who's our Director of Professional Practice, and then we're going to have another nurse guest, and we're going to specifically be talking about that Magnet journey, right? We're going to be talking about Magnet. We're going to be talking about what that looks like. What does that mean? What are the implications for everybody, for a staff nurse, for a program manager, for a recruiter? What does that look like? And why is that so important? And when there's only 8% of hospitals in the entire world that have Magnet status, how does that set you apart? So I'm really looking forward to that conversation.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask one last thing to Victoria, if you don't mind. Just one last thing.
You go ahead, Rollis.
I feel like Columbo. One last thing. So if you were to give advice to the 20-year-old version of Victoria, which is probably just a couple of years ago, but if you were to give advice to her, what advice would that be?
20-year-old me, probably should have sucked it up and done the dual degree nurse and business degree undergrad the first time around. But at the same time, I don't think I would have been as good a nurse as 21 or 22-year-old me would have been as good a nurse with the life experience that I have as I am now in Word or something. So life experience counts for a lot in nursing.
Life experience counts for a lot. I like that. Very good. Okay, good.
All right, Rollis. Any other questions, Columbo?
Well, I have a million, but we're going to cut it there. But I really enjoyed it with both of you ladies. This was a pleasure.
Victoria, I couldn't be more pleased. And Rollis, always a pleasure. And we will see you all the next time on RNCONNECT.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Oh, wow. I think she dropped off.
Oh, she dropped off. That's okay. We're still here.
That's okay.
We're still here to support each other.
That's right. We're no longer live.